Good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Delighted to have you with us. We have a very special program, one that I had envisioned 2 or 3 years ago, and with the advent of Unit 3 at Plant Vogel, we are now actually, it's come to reality in several ways. Our guest this morning is the honored Tim Grizzard, and we're going to be talking about nuclear power. We're not going to be talking about zoning, water, or apartments or anything like that. Tim Grizzard is a 1980 graduate of Georgia Tech with a Bachelor of Nuclear Engineering. Spent 13 years in the commercial nuclear power industry, 30 years in local government and local utilities, retired as city manager of Carrollton in 2021. He's a member of Rooteville Road Baptist Church. He's on the board of directors of West Georgia Airport Authority, the Heard County Development Authority, and Community Foundation of West Georgia. And we're counting. He has 8 kids and 3 grandkids.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. It's good to hear that voice again over the radio. I think we got a press release from Carroll EMC about Plant Vogel. I think it was back in August, and I think that's when I reached out to you. I would assume, I know I'm one, we really don't know much about nuclear power. Most people don't. I mean, The media doesn't talk about it unless it's negative. And so I just kind of want to get a little education this morning, and thankfully you agreed to come in and educate us. So let's start out with Nuclear Power 101. How is nuclear power generated? How is it accomplished?
Well, first I want to say it's very clean, it's very safe. It generates a very tiny amount of waste compared to the amount of power that it generates. And nuclear fuel is a ceramic pellet. It's uranium starts out about 0.75% in fissionable material. In this country, they enrich it to about 3%, and they make it into a little ceramic pellet. Those pellets are about a 1/2 inch in diameter. They're stacked in a zirconium tube that's about 12 feet long. Those tubes are bundled into assemblies that are about 8 inches square, and there's about 180 of those assemblies in a core. So you wind up with a nuclear core that's roughly 12 inches in diameter, 12 feet in diameter and 12 feet long. And those things, like these new plants over at Vogel, they generate 1,250 megawatts of power. That's enough for 500,000 homes. So that's a lot of power in a really small place. Those pellets heat water. That water's turned to steam. The steam turns a turbine. The turbine turns a generator, and that's where you get your electricity.
Go over that. So you kind of started out at nuclear energy 202 or 203.
Okay.
Now, the last sentence was nuclear energy 101.
All
so
right.
the uranium does what?
It heats water and turns that water to steam, and the steam runs through a steam turbine. The steam turbine turns a generator, and that makes electricity. So just like a coal-fired plant burns for coal and makes steam, nuclear power makes steam also.
So basically, this is nothing more than a steam engine.
Yeah, the secondary side, as we call it, of the plant is a same kind of steam plant as a coal-fired plant.
Right. It's just like a steam locomotive.
Well, a steam locomotive is a piston engine, but these are turbines. These are high-speed turbines.
But there's a fuel source.
Yeah, exactly.
In this case, the fuel source is the uranium.
Yeah.
So how, again, I want to keep it simple at first. So how is that uranium, how does it generate the heat?
Oh, the neutrons hit a U-235 atom, and it splits. When it splits, it gives off all kinds of energy, and it also generates more neutrons, and they hit more atoms, and they split, and that's your chain reaction. And when you have that chain reaction balanced, that's called criticality. Okay, when you're raising your power level, that's called supercritical. When you're going down in power, that's called subcritical. But those neutrons hit those U-235 atoms, they split, and there's significant energy given off each time you split those atoms.
Is that when they talk about enrichment? Is that what they're talking about?
No, enrichment is where it's naturally only 0.75% that's fissionable, and so they have to enrich that up to 3% to be able to have a critical core. And if you went up higher than that, you need something over 20% to make a bomb, and most bombs are about 90% enriched. So a commercial nuclear power plant does not have a fuel that could be turned into a bomb, but it can be turned into a useful heat source that makes electricity.
Say that last part again. A nuke. Go get.
Okay. A nuclear core, a commercial nuclear power core, could not be turned into a bomb.
Really?
Okay? No, it's not enriched enough.
Uh-huh.
So,
but it could be enriched if it was enriched enough.
Yeah, but enrichment takes a facility like Oak Ridge
You're
National,
right.
and so only countries are large enough to have a facility to enrich uranium. You can't do that in your basement.
Because that is a large.
It's
huge,
massive factory that does that.
And that's where they talk about centrifuges.
That's a technology that's used. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I give up on trying to keep all this simple. Let me ask you about. We hear a lot about nuclear subs, nuclear aircraft carriers.
Yeah.
So basically, they've got a nuclear reactor.
They've got multiple reactors. Something as large as a carrier will have multiple reactors. And the thing I find so interesting about those is because they use highly enriched uranium, they only have to be refueled about every 10 years. And so they can stay out a long time. They've got an abundance of energy. I think it's fascinating that a carrier that launches planes, that's a steam catapult that launches those planes into the air. And of course, that steam comes from the nuclear reactor, as well as steam turns a turbine that drives the propellers that drives the ship. And then it also makes electricity to.
Okay, well, let me ask you the question that gets the most attention, and you referenced it at the beginning, nuclear waste. Tell us more precisely about that, how much of it is generated or established, and how is it disposed of, and how safe or unsafe is it?
Well, there are some inherent safety features in the industry itself. I talked about 180 of those fuel bundles. You refuel a plant about every 18 months, and you replace a third of those bundles. So we're talking about basically 60 of those 12-foot long, 8 by 8 inch bundles. Right now, they're stored on site. Now, they are highly radioactive. They're stored under water, under 18 feet of water. That's the shielding to keep it from harming anybody. No one could steal that. Let's say a terrorist or whatever managed to get into a plant. If they couldn't get their hands on that, because if they got it out of the water, it would kill them, okay? The plan was, and there's a lot of politics in nuclear power, the plan was to take those fuel assemblies and reprocess them. There's still uranium in there that can be used. There's plutonium in there that got converted. The 238 isotope gets converted to plutonium, and that's a fissionable material that can be extracted and used in the nuclear submarines. And so the plan was to reprocess those, and that would reduce the volume even more. Right now, the industry doesn't do that. Right now, they just store it on site in a very safe manner. But again, it's a tiny, tiny volume of material compared to the amount of energy that's being generated. If you generated that much energy with say a coal-fired plant, your slag pile is massive. The waste is massive, and so it's a tiny amount of waste.
Yeah, and all of it is stored at the plants now.
Right now they are, yeah. Realize those assemblies I'm talking about, they don't look any different. All that radioactive material is inside those tubes that I talked about.
And they're like little small erasers, right?
Oh, the pellets look that way, yes.
Pellets look like. But the uranium has to be mined somewhere. Where is it mined?
And most uranium comes from this country, and
really?
It's out west, yeah. Huh. And then it has to be converted and processed and enriched to be usable.
So I assume that when we hear about Pakistan or China or North Korea getting a nuclear weapon, they're mining their own uranium?
No, somebody's selling them that. Now, China may be, but Pakistan's not.
Well, where are they getting it?
Probably Russia.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, everything you want to know about nuclear power and more with Tim Grizzard, and we'll be back after these words.
Oak Mountain Academy is an innovative school of academic excellence celebrating a 61-year legacy. I'm Patrick Uran, head of school, inviting you to join us for our annual Fall Festival this Friday at 3:30. Join us at the OMA Gym for food, fun, and fellowship. Costume, games, raffles, and competitions are just a few of our Fall Festival exciting activities. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Health is a journey, It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Grizzard, your host. Delighted to have you with us. Tim Grizzard's in the studio. We're talking all about nuclear power. We are on Facebook Live. So I mentioned in the beginning, Georgia Power's Plant Vogtle Unit 3 came online back in August. Units 1 and 2 have been operating for 34 years with Unit 4 planned for the future. Why in the world do these things cost so much, and why are there so many cost overruns?
Well, everything costs a lot, and I think they said Unit 3 was $17 billion, but any power plant is extremely expensive now. And what has been the bane of nuclear power is changed regulations as you go. I got in the industry in 1980 and worked in it. Last time was 94. You would have a plan underway and some regulation would change. Some of those changes were good. Some of those changes were necessary. As with any industry, it evolves and you realize mistakes you made and ways you could make it better. And so these new plants, the plants at Vogtle are called AP1000 Westinghouse plants. All of their safety features, almost all are passive. Either gravity makes it work or natural convection, or is that plant, no matter what kind of accident it has, it will cool itself for 3 days without any operator intervention. And after that, it's a very minor active role that an operator has to take. They're very well thought out. They don't rely on backup electricity and backup active components like pumps and valves, that sort of thing. The plants that were designed in the 70s are very, very safe. But again, they're backup generators. There are multiple safety pumps to inject water here and there, and that's just a more complicated way to build a plant. And so, but all of that stuff is expensive. Anything you build now is expensive. I mean, data centers are, in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So, I mean, I guess I'm saying $17 billion is not a frightening number to me anymore. And you got to have energy from somewhere. You're not going to get all the energy you need from one source.
What federal agencies regulate the nuclear industry?
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Is that the only one, or is there a bunch of them?
Well, EPA certainly does, but NRC is the main one. There are regulations all over the place.
Were they real big in the 80s? I mean, have they grown to a massive bureaucracy? Or do you know?
They started out a massive bureaucracy, and they were tough folks to deal with, and they need to be. That keeps plants safe, not being critical of that.
I understand France is 80% of their energy generated by nuclear power, while America is 20% generated by nuclear power. Uh-huh. So I understand it's emission-free, net zero, and highly reliable. So why not increase that percentage?
Well, just public perception and politics.
I guess that's kind of why you're here, to kind of educate us.
Absolutely. I mean, I was very environmentally minded in the 70s. I got out of high school in 76. And when I started looking at fields to go into, I wanted to go to Georgia Tech, and I realized, man, this was a way to make clean energy. It would eliminate our oil dependency. To me, it was the solution. And after 3 Mile Island, that was a moment for me that really shook me up. I realized that the press, I was young and naive, and I realized at that moment that the press doesn't get their story straight, and they like a lot of drama, and that was a story not handled well and not handled with the truth.
Well, besides 3 Mile Island, we've heard about Chernobyl, Monticello, Fukushima, and others. Yeah. Is the reporting on that consistently off the mark?
I think that it's hard to give the public the detail they need on something as complicated as a nuclear power plant. I mean, there are things I'd like to say about Western reactors are inherently safe. Like for neutrons to create fission, you need something to slow that neutron down so that its wavelength will hit that atom. And in a Western reactor, that moderator is what it's called, is water. And so that's also the coolant. So if you lose the coolant, you lose the reaction. So this China syndrome story, this movie that's not true, that can't happen. You can't have a reaction going on without that water. So if you lose the coolant in a Western reactor, you lose the reaction. Chernobyl is an old-timey technology. The moderator is carbon, is graphite. And that's a very risky thing to do. When the first reactor in this country, the first experimental reactor, when they were trying to develop an atomic bomb, had carbon or graphite as the moderator. Those Russian plants have that. If you lose the coolant, the carbon will catch on fire. So you got a radioactive source that's burning, that's putting radiation in the air. They don't have containment buildings. Our reactors, the vessel itself contains the fuel. Then there's a steel building around that. Then there's a concrete building around that. You've got all these containment features. So if something does go wrong, nothing can get out into the environment. You didn't have that at Chernobyl. It was basically a metal building like my barn. So we do our nuclear power plants correctly, and we do them safely. They don't necessarily do that
Do they still use carbon?
I'm sorry?
Do they still use carbon in Russia? Don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. I know.
So when you see a picture of a nuclear power plant, you see cooling towers.
Right.
So that's basically the water that is cooling the water.
Those coolant, that's the secondary side, the steam side.
Right.
You have to condense. The steam, after it's gone through the turbine, has to be condensed
Just
so it can
back
be pumped
into
back
water?
and heated again. So
Okay.
those cooling towers are not just at nuclear plants. Those are on fossil plants.
They're
also.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's still part of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's turned into be the symbol for nuclear power, but it's not. It really has nothing
Right.
to do with the nuclear side.
But the nuclear reactor itself, steel building, concrete containment. It's
Right.
not a very large platform, very large structure necessarily, is it?
Not from my standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're a couple of 100 feet across. And
Now, when you were
tall.
at Tech, there was a nuclear reactor
Right.
at Tech.
Yeah, we had a 5 megawatt, highly enriched uranium reactor, and they derated it. They took the fuel out and put lower enriched fuel in, and it's rated for something under a megawatt now.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, but now when there's an accident, what's the chances in these older designs or something in a foreign country, the radiation emitted or the radiation, if it's allowed to escape, will last for quite a long time?
It could, and that happened with Chernobyl.
Right.
And again, I don't have an answer on how to regulate Russia. They do a lot of things that we don't approve of, but certainly in Western reactors, and I'm even saying that Japan's reactors and China's reactors and all that are what I would call a Western reactor.
Okay, let's take another break. We'll be back with more as we learn a whole lot more about nuclear power with Tim Grizzard.
Oak Mountain Academy is an innovative school of academic excellence celebrating a 61-year legacy. I'm Patrick Uran, head of school, inviting you to join us for our annual Fall Festival this Friday at 3:30. Join us at the OMA Gym for food, fun, and fellowship. Costume, games, raffles, and competitions are just a few of our Fall Festival exciting activities. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
All right, good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. We're learning a lot about nuclear power, a kind of a different type show this morning, but with a familiar face and voice. Tim Grizzard is with us. So get this. 10% of the world is without electricity. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
10% of the world is without electricity, and 30% of the world heat their homes with wood and dung, yet there's a war on fossil fuel. So nuclear power would seem to be a very reasonable solution.
Oh, I think so. I think it's the solution.
Let's talk, the bad rap it gets is that, and has since its beginning, basically is the safety factor. But yet we talk about the war on fossil fuel, we hear about net zero, we hear about emissions. With nuclear power, there's virtually no emissions, correct?
Right, correct.
And if there are any emissions, it's a very low level, kind of non-threatening type.
Right. I mean, and again, I mean, you've got low level waste you bury, and that's just products generated from running the plant, maybe chem wipes or something like that, where they clean things up, or some basic filtration in some of the processes. But that's landfilled properly in the right kind of facility. I mean, there's just almost no. If you look at the amount of waste generated, even burning natural gas, there's tons of waste going in the atmosphere when you do that. So the reality is we got to have electricity from somewhere. If we don't have it, let's say we don't have it, people will burn every tree on this planet. Okay, so you've got to have electricity. We need to figure out where to get that. And I'm not opposed to solar, but it would take a solar field. I'm running the numbers. I see about half the size of Georgia to power this country, and then that's not reliable. That's not going to be there through the snowstorms and the
nighttime.
I mean, the nuclear power plant's going to run,
and the
no
batteries required. The storage of that is just. So I understand when Unit 4 comes on, Georgia will be generating more nuclear power than any other state in the union.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite remarkable. Let me go back to the waste, because that's kind of the central issue in a sense. They're buried on site now, but will there come a time that another storage mechanism will have to be called for?
Well, we know what that storage mechanism is. They actually built a reprocessing plant in Barnwell, South Carolina. And just to tell you how far back this goes, President Jimmy Carter decided not to activate that plant and use it. So that's been a few decades ago.
Is it up and running now?
I don't think so. I think everybody's still storing their fuel on site. But it can be reprocessed, and then the highly radioactive waste can be made a part of a ceramic, so it can't leach out, it can't leak, can't get in the groundwater. And the plan was to bury that ceramic in salt domes out west. And so
I think I heard that.
Very stable geological features, and it could just stay there forever. So there's a plan, and it's a good plan. I think the real one of the failures of nuclear power is engineers are terrible communicators, and so we've done a lousy job of selling this product to the public, and there are much more dangerous things that the public uses that are going on in their lives because somebody did a good job of selling that. There are all kinds of things we do that are not good for us, and again, I just think the technical people have done a lousy job of selling nuclear power to the public.
I guess you don't know as to why he decided not to authorize the reprocessing plant.
His fear was you can take so much plutonium out of that, and that is a bomb material. He thought if the U.S. didn't reprocess, the other countries wouldn't also, which was frankly a stupid idea. It didn't stop them at all. So the fear was they'd take waste from a commercial plant and eventually generate a bomb with it.
Is there we talk about aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines and generating raw power. Are there what other uses are there for nuclear power that maybe haven't been envisioned yet, or are there any possibly?
Frankly,
easy question.
There could have been smaller reactors made, and they could be put everywhere. It could be.
That was really a better way of asking the question.
A very standardized plant, and it could be. I mean, imagine I mean, any remote area where you needed power and you needed power long term, you didn't need to worry about shipping in fuel or whatever. I just think of how much energy is expended moving fuel sources around.
Oh, yeah.
I always think about Key West and how Key West was founded so that they could refuel ships with coal, and they had to move all that coal out there on a rail. And so when you talk about, I mean, reactors again on these carriers and submarines, they only have to refuel about every 10 years.
I didn't know the Key West story.
Yeah.
We'll have to say that for another.
Oh, yeah. And I just think that's fascinating. And it was a brilliant thing to do. It was the right thing to do at the time. But it cost a lot of money to move that kind of bulk fuel around.
Well, so back to my assertion that 10% of the world is without electricity.
Mm-hmm.
If you could figure out these small reactor mechanisms, then you could take care of that.
Mm-hmm. Easily.
I mean, because they could go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
It's amazing what a PR problem will do to something.
Yeah, and we have them all the time.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's just...
That's the way life is.
Yeah, it is. It's very frustrating.
Huh. Can people tour a nuclear power plant?
Oh, you're not going to get in the safety-related areas. You know, you might tour one under construction, but once fuel's on site, you're not going to get. There's too much. It'd take you 3 days to get a background check and train to go in there, and so they're not going to let the public in there.
Do you have any concerns about terrorism and nuclear and Plant Vogels or anything?
No. I mean, a terrorist could damage the plant. They're not going to damage it in a way where it affects the public or the environment.
And that was because, like you were telling at the beginning, about the water cooling down and not having to deal with backup generators.
And of course, there's a lot of security at a nuclear plant also. There are guys there with M16s, so it's not
or more.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of guys in a pickup truck's not going to take it over.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's fascinating. Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap it up. I thank you for coming in.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Plant Vogel went online, unit number 3, and it's just, it says here, 1 uranium fuel pellet provides as much energy as 1 ton of coal.
Isn't that unreal?
149 gallons of oil and 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. And the pellet is the size of an eraser, pencil eraser. So there you have it. All right, well, we've solved the energy problem. So next time we come back, we'll solve something else. How about that?
I'd love to.
Okay. Our guest this morning has been Tim Grizzard, former city manager of the great city of Carrollton, who retired in 2021. He still serves, however, West Georgia Airport Authority, Heard County Development Authority, and Community Foundation of West Georgia. Not Flame, but a former pilot also. And proud graduate of the Georgia Institute of Technology with a degree in nuclear engineering. We thank our sponsors, Oak Mountain Academy and Tanner Health System. Go out and make it a great day. You're in tune to WLBB Carrollton.